Hey everybody, it's Jeremy with Civitas Law Group. I'm doing something a little new today. I had a subscriber that actually requested that I review a video of somebody representing themselves in court and see maybe what could they have done better or what did they do well. So, here we go.
In August of 2019, I then served as a full-time law enforcement officer with the United County Sheriff's Office in Florida from September of 2019 until May of this year, which might include the latter process to come up here.
Okay, so if you're ever representing yourself in court or going to court with an attorney or anything else, a police officer is always going to start sort of with their resume, and you're going to be sitting there going, why on earth does he need to tell us all of this? They're giving their qualifications to the court, even though the court's probably totally aware of them. This essentially legitimizes them, or they're beating the he doesn't have sufficient training argument before you even make it. So, very typical here.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Staples. It's your turn.
So, would I get to cross him?
So just to be clear, the judge may not even answer that question for you. You've got to know what you're doing before you get there. There are a whole lot of judges that when you say, oh, so can I cross him? You're just supposed to know that it's your turn. And a judge might say, I'm not allowed to answer any question for me that you have. Most of them aren't going to be that strict. If you're just asking for procedural, wait, what are we doing right now? They'll probably answer, but there might be some that won't.
Able to be inspected in the state of New Hampshire.
I believe it's going to be 266 section 1, I'm not sure.
266-1, but you're not sure. So can we get a copy of it out, or can I pull it up on my phone to show to him? Yeah, my question, he says he's not sure about that.
So here's the issue once again. He's asking the judge, can I do this? Can I do that? If he thought he was going to need a copy of that statute, he knew what he got charged with violating. He probably should have had a copy of that statute available to him, probably in print format, so that he can have it ready to show to the judge, the officer, whoever he needs it to see it.
So how is he supposed to enforce this registration and inspection law if he's not sure how it works?
Okay, and it's a relatively fair question, but he's asking the judge a question, trying to make an argument that really he could have made an opening argument or could make in a closing argument, and instead he's asking the judge during cross-examination. It's not going to go over too well.
You can answer that question.
Whenever I have a question about a statute, I go and I pull it up, I read the statute prior to taking any kind of enforcement action.
And did you do?
So the judge actually kind of does him a favor here and redirects it toward the officer. Clearly, this gentleman actually asked a question to the judge. How can he, so third person, how can he enforce this statute? Really, it should have been, how can you enforce this statute if you're not familiar with it? It should have been asked directly to the officer. Judge kind of helped him out there and redirected him, said, it's supposed to be going in that direction.
In this case.
I didn't know that 266 section 5 does require the vehicle to be inspected to be operated on the road.
And does that require a registered or an unregistered vehicle to be inspected?
I would have to consult with the statute.
Okay, can we do that or no?
Once again, if he had actually had, he's not doing bad here. He's asking for knowledge from the police officer on this particular statute, the one that he got charged with violating, I think. They said it was New Hampshire law, I believe. I don't know anything about New Hampshire law. I didn't look that statute up. I'm not going to comment on New Hampshire law. But it sounds like he's saying, okay, you're not familiar with this statute and you charged me incorrectly because it states XYZ. But he keeps asking the judge, can we look it up? If he had had a copy of it right there, and he's saying, are you familiar with the statute? He could have asked a question right at the end of this line of questioning that led up to this moment and said, would it surprise you to know that this statute actually states, and read part of the statute? And then asked, can we have this statute admitted into evidence, or can we have the court take judicial notice that that is, in fact, the actual text of the statute? He wasn't prepared for that. I mean, he's a pro se litigant. He's representing himself. He's not doing bad, all things considered, but probably could have had a copy of the statute with him and been more prepared.
Oh, yes, I do. I have more questions. So, you don't know if 266.5, which is what you charged me with, correct?
Yes, 266 section 5.
Explicitly extends to unregistered vehicles.
I cannot answer that at this time.
Okay, so that would be a no. That would be a no.
Can you
Yes
answer
or no?
the
So
question one more time?
RSA 266.5 explicitly extend its application to unregistered vehicles?
I'm not sure at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Once again, would it surprise you to know that the text of the statute says, and it could reinforce this idea that it seems like he's trying to say, it doesn't actually extend to me because my vehicle was unregistered. Seems to be his argument. I don't know. But the text of the statute really was what he was missing here.
I'm not sure if you could answer, how can an unregistered vehicle be subject to a law that it's not subject to? But you don't know about the law, so you can't answer the question.
I can't even answer that question because I don't know what he asked. Probably should have rethought the phrasing of that question. He's working from a list here. If you have to do this, think through your question. Ask it to somebody else. If they don't understand your question, good chance the judge is going to say, I don't know what you're trying to ask. And the cop's going to say, I don't know what you're trying to ask, or witness, or whoever you're talking to. So make sure your question actually makes sense before you get there.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check the statute.
Okay. Can an unregistered vehicle legally undergo inspection? And if not, how would an owner comply with the law?
If an attorney had actually been there, they'd probably object to that question being compound. So if you are going to ask questions, make sure you ask. Some people want the question to be, here's the question, oh, and the sub part. Don't ask the sub part. Ask the question and then follow up with, okay, and because you said that, here's the sub part. Follow up.
That the vehicle posed an immediate safety risk that justified enforcing an inspection requirement.
I did not notice any immediate public safety risks.
Does the lack of a valid inspection sticker inherently render a vehicle unsafe if it is not registered for operation?
Can you ask that question one more time, sir?
Does the lack of a valid inspection sticker inherently render a vehicle unsafe if it is not registered for operation? So just because it doesn't have an inspection sticker, does that mean that it's unsafe?
Not necessarily, sir.
You know, that one, I thought he actually asked a very direct question. That seemed that the officer just didn't like the answer he was about to give. I'm not sure if this case hinges on that answer or not, because as I said, I'm not commenting directly on the laws of this state. I haven't read the statute. I don't know. But that one actually a very well stated question that to me, it looked like the officer just didn't want to answer. So good job there.
Does the legislative history of RSA 266.5 indicate that it was intended to apply to unregistered vehicles?
I know nothing about the legislative history of that particular statute.
Now, there's an honest answer. I don't know any police officers that go looking up the legislative history of a statute. In fact, it'll come into arguments sometimes if we're trying to prove the definition of a particular word or the application. Okay, but what he's basically going for here is there another statute? Is there a case? Is there legislative history that suggests that this law should apply to me? The officer's just basically saying, yeah, I don't know. So he's making a whole lot of legal arguments. Probably factual arguments would do him some good here, but he's making a lot of legal arguments. I don't know how valid they are because I didn't look up this statute.
How does the state reconcile applying inspection laws to unregistered vehicles when the statute primarily refers to registration?
I'm not prepared to answer that question.
How can vehicle owners comply with the inspection requirement for unregistered vehicles when registration appears to be a prerequisite for inspection?
I would need to consult the statute.
Were you aware that you can't get a vehicle inspected until it's registered?
I was aware of that.
Now, that was the closest thing to what I've been saying. What I've been saying here the whole time is, okay, give him the text of the statute and say, would it surprise you to know that? Or, just as he phrased it right now, were you aware that the statute says, or were you aware that the laws of this state say? So pretty good wrap up there, except for that it didn't seem to go in his favor because the officer basically said, yeah, I was aware of that.
So you did know that. So then how did you think it was appropriate to apply an inspection requirement to an unregistered vehicle, which makes it impossible to have it inspected until it's registered, as you just agreed to?
Because the statute requires a vehicle to both be registered and inspected to be operated on the ways of the state.
And what law is that?
I don't know off the top of my head for the registration.
Okay.
No, that part doesn't surprise me. A lot of officers don't know the statute off the top of their head. Especially, I think during the whole resume part earlier in the video, this officer said that he had only been working for this police department since earlier this year. And I think he said he came from another state, maybe Florida. And I think we're in New Hampshire here, if I remember right. For him to not have the statutes memorized, yeah, that's not too surprising. And even though a lot of people would think that's like just dropped a bomb, right? We blew this case wide open. The officer doesn't even know the statute. No, he doesn't actually have to have the statutes memorized. He can call an on-call attorney, an on-call prosecutor, and say, this is the situation, what do I charge him with? He could call his sergeant, he could call 100 people and say, okay, this is the situation, which statute is that a violation of? Now, we may not be a fan of that habit, but that's actually really common. And to have them try to memorize the whole criminal code, or in this case, the civil traffic code, that's not going to happen, not practical.
Try to get some notes here. Hold on. Oops.
Do you have any other questions?
Yes, I'm going through my notes. Can you give me a second, please? Sorry.
If you can let me know, because there's other people waiting for their turns, how much time do you need?
Well, it's going to take however much time the trial takes. I mean, am I limited on amount of time that I...
Okay, so look, it's a civil hearing for a traffic ticket. The judge is the trier of fact and the trier of law in this situation. Probably biting her head off because she's asking you, do you have other questions and do you know how long it's going to take you? Probably not the best way to get your desired outcome. So I probably would have just calmly said, if Your Honor, I just had a little technical difficulty here. I'm looking up my notes and I'll be back to it just as soon as I can. That's probably the best way to answer that question instead of, it's going to take as long as it's going to take, Your Honor. Yep. Chill. Just chill. Stay calm. I know nobody wants to be in this situation, representing yourself in court for a situation or a charge that you clearly don't agree with, but you are there, so try to take it as calmly as you can. Be nice to the judge, unless for some reason they're actually doing something offensive, which it sounds like this judge is actually being pretty cool.
have here to defend myself?
Well, it will impact the others who are waiting behind you.
Well, that's not my problem. I'm not the one that was instructed to be here today, or instructed myself to be here. I didn't ask them to be here, okay? So...
All right, I don't understand why this rude judge is interrupting this man. He's not speaking nonsense.
That wasn't rude, and the judge wasn't interrupting. He was sitting there basically silent, and she was saying, how long are we going to sit here silent for? Sorry, I'd got to disagree with the... I like what this YouTube channel is doing here, but I got to disagree with the commentary there. I don't think that was very rude. The judge is just basically saying, how much time do you need? That's not a bad thing.
Which I appreciate, for the registration.
I didn't believe it was necessary to write you 2 citations.
Okay, even though the registration is primary to inspection.
Is a prerequisite of the inspection, yes.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, is he actually trying to talk himself into a second ticket here? Again, I'm not familiar with the statute, but it literally sounds to me like he's trying to say, hey, you should have charged me with 2 violations. And you didn't, said, okay, thank you for not charging me with 2 violations. And, counted myself pretty lucky.
I'm done. Thank you.
The court will take this under advisement and issue a written order. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice...
All right, now the video concludes and says that they think that the case was dismissed. I'll be honest with you, that would surprise me. Maybe the judge actually did agree with his legal argument if she went back and checked the statute and said, yeah, I don't know how he would have complied with that statute in this situation. Maybe. But it would surprise me based on the fact that he didn't wrap that up very well. He didn't actually cite the text of the statute, didn't, as I said earlier, have a copy of the text of the statute ready, which are readily available to most of the general public. So I want you to know, I like what this YouTube channel is doing, kind of showing people or at least teaching people how to represent themselves. That's a good thing, especially in traffic court. It usually doesn't make sense to hire an attorney for traffic court. You're talking about a maybe $200 ticket, and yeah, it's going to make your insurance go up by what, 30 or 50 bucks a month? But hiring an attorney to come to a hearing like this and to prepare for all of it could be thousands. It usually doesn't make financial sense to do that. So representing yourself is the situation a lot of people find themselves in. So I like what they're doing here. Maybe don't necessarily agree with some of the commentary that they said here, but it's a good thing. So look out for yourselves. Always the very best thing is don't violate the law. That's the best way to not find yourself in court. But if you do have to represent yourself in court, hey, best of luck to you.